Coming up, highlights of the Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebrations and a fascinating forum of arts and letters from 3 acclaimed Louisiana writers on today's edition of Folks. Hello and welcome to Folks. I'm Sonya Masingale. Last week, the nation celebrated the anniversary of the birthday of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The theme for the holiday this year was Living the Dream, Let Freedom Ring. There were numerous programs commemorating the day throughout the state. We had a chance to sit in on 2 of them in Baton Rouge.
I have a dream that one day the state of Alabama, whose governor having his lips filled with the words of interposition and nullification, will one day be transformed into a situation where little white girls and little white boys can join hands with little black girls and little black boys and walk the streets as brothers and sisters. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And let it ring.
I am on my way, bound for Jubilee. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am on my way, bound for Jubilee. Oh, my brother, won't you come with me? Oh, my sister, you must come today. Oh, my brother, won't you come with me? Or the devil might come and take you away before you get to Jubilee. Hallelujah, 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 bound for Jubilee. Hallelujah, 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 bound for Jubilee.
Dr. King was a deeply religious man, the son and grandson of prominent ministers. I am convinced that his religion was the basis for his courage. It was also the basis for his humanity and his philosophy of nonviolent direct action. In his religious practice, in his preaching, in his civil rights work, in his social activism, Dr. King exemplified the best of religious practice. That is to say, he observed the teaching that it is man's duty not only to have faith, but also to serve others. Indeed, his life exemplifies the teachings accorded to the Gospel of St. Luke, to heal the brokenhearted, to free the captives, and to set at liberty those that are bruised. He likened himself, you recall, to a drum.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Little innocent lamb.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Hypocrite, tell you what he do.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
He'll talk about me.
And he'll talk about you.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Little innocent lamb.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Little innocent lamb.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Devil, he's got a slippery shoe.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Now, if you don't mind, he's gonna slip it on you.
I'm gonna serve God till I die.
Cause there ain't no dying over there. In that heavenly land. In that heavenly land. In that heavenly land. No dying over there. There ain't no dying over there. In that heavenly land. There'll be joy, joy, joy.
If you recall, when he was shot down, he was in Memphis trying to help garbage workers organize. Yes, we, the workers of Louisiana, dream of a time when every able-bodied man, woman, and child who want a job and able to do a job will have a job. Because we recognize that jobs is the answer. It's the answer to our unemployment problem. It's the answer to our health problems, our education problems, our housing problems, and even some of our discrimination problems. Jobs, my friends, is the answer. We dream of a time when dignity...
I must go with him. Can you hear him calling you today? My Lord's calling, I must go with him, or the devil might come and take me away before I get to Jubilee. Hallelujah, 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 bound for Jubilee. Hallelujah, 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 bound for Jubilee.
You're not fully free if you no longer have to walk past the white schoolhouse to an inferior black schoolhouse, if you don't have a job to send your children to a better school. You're not fully free if they say you can have a job, but they don't provide an education so you can prepare yourself to take the job. And there's still among us members of this legislature who meet on both sides in these great halls, who in a very subtle way, not by sicking the dogs on you or calling you names or making speeches or ostracizing you, but in a very subtle way are trying to keep you from reaching the greatness that is America. They still will not vote for all the money stealing.
Hallelujah, 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 bound for Jubilee.
For a change of pace, we decided to take a break from our usual format of minority issues to pay tribute to 3 outstanding black women of arts and letters in Louisiana. Joining me in the studio today is Dr. Pinkie Gordon Lane, Professor Emeritus from Southern University. She has been writing poetry since 1960 and has published works in numerous literary publications and magazines. Her single volumes of poetry include Wind Thoughts, I Never Scream, and The Mystic Female, for which she received a nomination for the Pulitzer Prize. Dr. Arthenia Bates Millican, also Professor Emeritus from Southern University. Her interest in creative writing was stimulated at an early age and encouraged by Langston Hughes, whom she met while studying at Atlanta University in the 1940s. Her poems, articles, book reviews, and stories have appeared in publications too numerous to recount in the time we have here, but she has also published a collection of short stories, Seeds in the Snow, and a novel, The Deity Nodded. Also with us today is Mona Lisa Saloy, whose work has been published in such distinguished journals as The Black Scholar and the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal. She is now teaching and studying for a PhD at LSU, and she has just completed a play entitled 3 Days in April, soon to be produced. Welcome to Folks. I'm glad to have you here. We're honored with your presence. The first question I would ask of such distinguished literary guests is, why do you write? What makes you write?
Very often my poems will start with a scene, a geographical scene, something I'm surrounded with, something in my environment. But always, almost inevitably, that poem, before it ends, will become an internalized thing. So it begins to explore my psyche and my feelings and the way I feel about the world around me.
Dr. Millican, you began writing at a time when there were few published black writers, let alone black female writers. What made you think that you could be a success at that?
I was really influenced by my father. He was the principal of an elementary school at that time. He would write all of his plays, his speeches, the welcome address, the closing remarks, and I always was considered a father's child, so I tried to follow his footsteps by writing poetry.
Mona Lisa, does it take a particular type of arrogance or of confidence to make you confident enough to write and publish?
Certainly confidence after a while, but I'm a storyteller, a grandfather's child. And my grandfather was born a slave, and I spent a lot of time with him. He was very old. So I listened to his stories, so telling stories was very natural for me. And I met writers, and they said, "You're a writer." And I said, "What's that?" So I was telling stories and writing, and then I met writers and learned how to be a writer. So it kind of happened to me backwards.
What inspires most of your work?
I would say largely the cultural tradition of storytelling and pastime rhymes and passing things from one generation to another and cherishing the best memories and learning from the worst ones.
Dr. Lane, is it difficult to combine a writing career with raising a family?
Well, yes and no. Some of my poems were actually inspired by my family situation. But you do have to divide your time, and I think what is important is learning how to structure your time. That's important in any kind of field of endeavor, knowing how to structure your time and make the most of the time that you have. I was a career person, as you know. I worked, taught at Southern University for many years. I've been in academia before I retired last May for about 30 years. And that was the most difficult challenge of all, you see, holding down a full-time job and finding time to write. But it was as with anything else, you know, if this is what you really want to do, if this is where you are becoming what you want and what you want to be, you'll find a way to do it.
Dr. Millican, and you, did you find the time to have a family and a career and the writing, the teaching and the writing? How did that all fit in?
Well, I can say almost ditto to what Dr. Lane said. But somewhere along the line, someone told me about Stevenson's habit of carrying a tablet or a pad with a pencil or pen at all times. And I picked that habit up early so that wherever I am, I will just write things. I did quite a lot of my writings at the red light. And I was very happy to find out that Toni Morrison corroborated this stance as a true stance by saying that she did the same thing in writing her masterpieces.
At the red light?
Yes. Well, you know, when they say stop, the red light goes on, you take your little pencil and write down.
You mean while driving a car?
No, when it stops, you write. And of course, you may have someone blowing behind you, you know, because you want to write that last word, but you do it anyway. But being a loner, and even in church, too, I have a tendency to, you know, to just write. But being a loner, I find that I can comfort myself by writing about the people around me, especially the folk, because I like the sound of the folk life, the talk, the mannerisms, everything, and most of all the unconventional English. Now I'm dealing in what my sister calls psychic archaeology. I'm digging into my own past and the past of my family life, because I didn't know my family until around 80 on my father's side and 81 on my mother's side.
Goodness. Mona Lisa, you're coming along, you're the youngest of our group today, well, I think. And you are following paths that have pretty much been made clearer by people who went before you. Do you think it's going to be easier for you to move into the mainstream of American publishing?
I think it's difficult for any writer to move into mainstream. Depends on what you're after.
What are you after?
I'm after cultural stories. I want to create the kind of stories that I read coming up that warmed me, that gave me the sense of myself that I hadn't found in the textbooks, that I didn't know existed. It wasn't until I read Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and other people that I had a sense of this great legacy of a people, a strong people, a people with spirit. And there's so much that I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen a lot of change that I'd like to save. There's so much of what we live as African Americans that is not put down, that I want to, if I can, to make the best contribution to that as possible. On the other hand, I am an entertainer. I do perform. I do poetry readings for cultural events. So that puts me in a larger audience. But it's not just for the dollar. It's not just for the temporary fame. It's to correct the mistakes of the past, to self-determine, to write ourselves into the future according to what I think is normal.
I realize that all of you are continuing to write and publish, and Mona Lisa's going into her teaching career, and you mentioned something, Dr. Lane, about lectures in the future.
Yes, I've done a lot of this in the past while I was teaching. it's a part of my work to go to different places as a consultant. Now I want to do more of that. I'm going next week, for example, to Tougaloo College and talk with some students there and do a reading. Going to Spelman College a little later on. I'm going to New Orleans, possibly to New York in April. And I want to do more of this. With the background that I have in education, many, many years of it, I feel that I can bring a lot to this kind of endeavor.
We're looking forward to hearing more from all three of you. Earlier, we taped each of our distinguished guests reading from their works. We'd like to share some of those readings with you now, beginning with Dr. Pinkie Gordon Lane.
This poem is entitled Gordon, at age 21. Gordon, now a man, his jazz a flight to magic, soaring with a downbeat, progressive, cool, funky. His appearance conservative, this boy 4 generations away from slaves of the dormant fields. His drums beat a vocal message. He gigs his way into his own world and circles angels, devils, with African telecommunications in this modern idiom. Gordon, my man-child, grown to mid-proportions, his silences tracking the dawn. Girl at the window. She sits there, hand on cheek, head turned towards the open window where shadows pulsate like quivering beasts. Summer and autumn contend in blue skies and spiraling air. Ghosts and green light, a mere breath, touching. A golden animal streaks across space, and lavender hills outline the rim. Will they tell the level of seasons? Will they fly home to the sky? Her skin is copper-toned, and eyes the nests of birds. She dreams of Nairobi and wildebeest. The equator, a blue line slung in mid-air. Nuclear peril. The lights went out like a thrust of iron or bones sinking in sand. The hours melt in body. This time I count them and watch the rain drop its pellets, heavy as the leafless limbs swaying downward, orphaned wastes. Landscape stretches for miles into a gray sky. One figure silhouettes the dream. Holocaust is no longer real, no longer imagined, no longer one moment of dread. Consciousness hangs on the sharp edge of night. I wait for a lingering note, the song, the music, layered somewhere in a burial of hills. Lost in the solitude of waiting, I dream of color, of azaleas, of perfumed gardenias, Louisiana now a palmetto, uprooted in a dream of song. Who ravishes this world, the future in absence of time? A spiraling ball takes dominion, writing its brilliant epitaph in a chain of fire. I reach for you, your touch only a memory, a space, a center of space, an absence of space, a song, a dance, a canvas remembered.
Our next selection is from Dr. Arthenia Bates Millican.
Today, I am reading a confrontation scene from the Deity Nodded. This is a confrontation between Tisha Dees and the mother of the community church. Tish, I don't want to spoil your appetite, but you gone from your raising, child. You sitting there looking all pretty, but you dying, sugar. Dying? Tisha turned and looked at Georgia Ann McCullough. She was dying. The old woman was dying. Dying as she had done every day of her life, though she was too good a minstrel man to know it. Her ugly life was death. She no doubt would have a beautiful funeral according to their pattern, with a nice, long obituary, good remarks from the deacons, a wailing eulogy from the preacher, and honest tears from unknown visitors at the grave. but her life was and had always been an ugly death. Look, sugar, when you go back up that road, you remember what God done for me, and you forget about that alley and them Muslims. Don't you know them Muslims will run the world off the map, child? Yes, ma'am. Tisha looked at the old woman and decided that she would not argue. The old woman was set in her ways and would never change. But Mother Georgia gave her the proof, the final proof, that she had chosen the right path, the path away from the religion of the cross. God, the God of Mother Georgia, the God of her parents, the God who had let his only son be crucified by wicked men, was uncaring. Then, as now, she told herself, if he was up there, he was oblivious of all the Georgia and McCullums in the universe.
Now we'll end today's literary program with poetry by Mona Lisa Saloy.
The first poem is a personal recollection of growing up black in New Orleans. It's called My Mother's the Daughter of a Slave. My mother's the daughter of a slave, an early generation of free city black women. New Orleans, 1907, when jazz honked and tonked dives in the French quarters and uptown. She was jet black and she was happy. Never knew she was cute till a high yellow nigger named Louis came round. Called mother pretty black, almond eyes, streetlight bright. I never knew her grown. She said, live good, baby. She passed in 66, knew everybody for blocks, and they came every night for 2 weeks to pay last respects. Stood single file for 2 blocks on the banquet. From sundown to starlight, they came, they said, 'cause they remembered. Said she always had a wink, a smile, and time to listen or make big fun or help or be. Always said, live good every day. It's all we've got. And they came, they said, 'cause they remembered. She was jet black and she was happy. Never knew she was cute till a high yellow nigger named Louis came round. Called mother pretty black, almond eyes, streetlight bright. I never knew her grown. She said, live good, baby. It's all we've got. The next one is a more general recollection about growing up black in the U.S. of A. It's called Frontliners. We came after World War II, the doo-wop kids, the original teenagers who believed in America, those second-class citizens, the last Jim Crow generation. Often imitated from Jolson to Elvis, our beat took the Chitlin circuit to juke joints and nightclubs back of town. We made bandstand and Motown, anointed the world with soul and the afro, sowed freedom into America's vote, and believed there was a place for us in the land of the free. Colored-only signs said no. Then no's had reasons. No experience, no training. Oh, school was free for a minute. Affirmative action plans gave temporary job tickets and opened new doors. So the youth moved north, bit the bitter freedom of blank faces, where everyone's from someplace else, the taste of a modern era. Where's the black community now? In double Dutch contests, sponsored by McDonald's or under the cherry moon at the Grammys. I can count the black men my age on one hand. I'm related to the good ones, or they married friends. The others died in Vietnam, the streets, or die now in prison. The other warriors left, the brothers now on the front line, hold on to their blackness and sanity like a last meal. Where's the black community now? Burrowed warmly in our hearts, rising in a melody or two, or a good gospel shout at Sunday service. We live coast to coast, send our love by stamp or phone call, see our traditions on dance floors of discos, where DJs scratch to tenders in Reeboks or Jordache and Guess jackets. Oh yeah, we still speak black. Ghettoese is now hip enough to get airplay from radio to video. And the times are tighter than a whale's tail. The government won't give a crippled crow a crutch.
so we smell of sweat and the sobbing of lean years. We know how to cry and hold each other, no matter how many statistics publish lies about how we don't or can't stay married. We've looked north long enough, saw promises fade with each dusk. We grew inside America like oak trees and Louisiana pine. The eagle still pays up. We pinch the nickels in our pockets till the buffalo squeals, and thank God for weekends. We grow lean, dig soul on the commute to work, whisper on sidewalks, and celebrate minutes. Our children skip to ghetto blasters. We escaped America's change like chameleons, but we know how to live and wait till le bon temps roule, till the good times roll.
I hope you've enjoyed our program. Be sure to join us next week as we take a look at adoption and foster care in Louisiana. See you then. Bye-bye.